Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Peter, thank you so much for joining me on Coaching Call. How are you this morning?
I'm great. It's really great to be with you today.
I appreciate it. But is it morning where you are?
It's afternoon. I'm in Hamburg, Germany, so I'm 6 hours ahead of New York time.
Oh, there you go. Nice. So considering your life, when you reflect and you look back, you've made a lot of choices that made you who you are, right?
Absolutely.
And the actions that you've taken, the conversations you've had, the people you've met along the way. And I'd love to know a little deeper. I'd love to know where were you born? Where did you grow up? And I know there's 3 questions, but here it is. Who influenced you before the age of 10?
Oh, okay. Those are some deep questions. I was actually born in Germany, but I grew up in Canada. My dad was in the military, Canadian military over in Germany. And so I lived over here until I was 4. And then we moved to Canada and had the great benefit of growing up in a beautiful city like Vancouver. And growing up with both cultures. That was an amazing experience. I guess in terms of the most influential person in my life before I was 10 would have been my grandmother, my German grandmother here, because I spent the very early years with her a lot. And she was probably the most positive person in my life. She was someone who always believed in me, but always just was very warm and positive and encouraging, and reinforced a lot of very positive ideas in me. So she unfortunately passed away when I was 19. But I, that memory of those early years with her, and then when they'd come to visit us in Canada, is something I always look forward to. So yeah, I think it's so important to learn from our elders, and she was just someone that I got so much from an early age in life.
So reflecting back on your grandmother, what would you say were some of the influential aspects of how she touched your life?
Yeah, I think the primary thing about her is her love was very unconditional, and she really saw the good in me. She saw the potential in me, and she always encouraged and reinforced that. So yeah, I mean, memory's a funny thing, but that's the
Right.
way I remember her. And when you're a kid and things are changing, and you have someone there who reassures you that everything's going to be okay, and everything was. And so I think that her whole positive energy and the way she approached life, that just made such a profound impact and stuck with me.
Nice. So you grew up, or you were born in Germany, but you grew up in Canada, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you said when your grandma used to come over, that was also special for you. Did you go back and forth from Canada to Germany as a child?
We did. So, the odd summer vacation, it wasn't every year, but sort of every second year they would come see us, or then, every 2 or 3 years we would go over there. So, and the rest was just by telephone and stuff before the age of internet and all the
Right.
amazing technology we have now. So yeah, and where other people were going on vacations to somewhere tropical, I was going back to a small town in Germany to just hang out with family.
Nice, nice. Probably great fond memories. I'm sure the food and just probably just sitting around the table, right, and going outdoors and doing things of that nature. Probably something that you recall fondly of.
Yeah, and I think what was what made the childhood so rich in that way, in a positive way, was experiencing different cultures. So growing up in Vancouver, it's already a very multicultural city, but there's a very Canadian, the culture that I grew up with. But then also being able to see the world from a different perspective and in a different light, I think that benefited me a lot. Where other kids I grew up with, they may have had parents from different backgrounds, but it was still in that environment of Canada, which was a very it was an amazing place to grow up. But I really enjoyed having sort of that contrast, or at least having different perspectives.
Nice, nice. And so you speak German.
Yeah, my first language is English. Hopefully, you don't hear any kind of German accent. I don't think I've developed one in the time living over here, but I do. It's I'm fluent in it, but you never quite get it the same as if you had grown up here. But
Mm,
I always say my parents forced me to go to German school as a kid every Saturday, which now I'm super grateful for. But even though I speak both languages fluently, having lived here now for 20 years, but it's still not
mm.
the same as the language I'm most comfortable with is always going to be English.
Is it really? Wow, interesting. When you consider when you speak it now, here's a question that some people have asked me, and I'm going to ask you. What language do you think in?
In English.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Even when you're speaking German?
uh it's funny, I don't know that I define my thoughts. So, definitely in language, I will definitely have mainly English speaking thoughts. But I
Mm,
think if I'm in a German environment and if something's happened to me where the conversations were in German, then I will, the thoughts will be in German. I'm pretty fortunate that I can switch back and forth quite
mm,
fluidly. So yeah, that's a real benefit. Depending on who you talk to, some people don't even hear an accent when I speak German, which happens once in a while, but I still make grammatical mistakes. But
oh,
I'm
yeah.
most comfortable in English, so I tend to revert to that most of the time when I'm thinking. Yeah,
Nice, nice. I'm bilingual as well. As well, I speak Spanish, so it's very interesting when we can think in the language we're speaking, but primarily we resort back to the language we're most comfortable
exactly. But I've had dreams in German.
in. Really?
Although most, again, it's contextual, right? So when in my dreams, a lot of times it's English, but so it's great when you can dream in both languages.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, besides your grandma, who influenced you in a deeper relational aspect that made you become who you are today?
Uh, well, I don't know that it was one person. It was the environment that I grew up in. Obviously, my parents had a significant impact on my life, and that had its pros and cons.
Mm,
So, at home, we sitting around the dinner table, we would talk about things that maybe other families might not have talked about. We would talk about politics or things that were not kid stuff. They're adult topics, and so I think I benefited from that. And I think that there were a lot of good lessons that I had. My parents were, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad
mm,
was a firefighter, and so considering I grew up in a very middle class, blue collar kind of family, we had very interesting cultural conversations, and they challenged when I would come home with, something my friends were talking about at school. They were very good to teach me to challenge certain perspectives on the world, certain assumptions that I was making. And I think that was something, just that growing up in that environment was a really good way of not believing everything, not believing the status quo,
Right.
you know, questioning things. And I think that has served me well. It's, it helped me be more of a independent thinker, and not, as my dad used to say, not one of the sheep.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And hopefully not one of the black sheep either.
No, well,
Right.
I guess they probably saw me as that. You have your phases, and I think as a teenager in my early 20s, I was a bit of a black sheep. But we all go through our growth phases and our
Mhm.
times when we experiment and rebel, and I certainly was no exception there.
Yeah, I think we all have gone through those stages. So, outside of your family, who were you? And I know, and I appreciate you saying that there were so many people who helped guide you in a way. Sometimes the people that hurt me the most are my best coaches, right? But
Yeah.
so outside of your family, who would you say is some of the influential people that have shaped who you are today?
Yeah, I'd say certainly people I've worked with and so on. It's sometimes hard for me to think back to those days as a teenager. I don't know if you can relate to this, but those early years, or the years of my 20s, because I had a fairly difficult, sort of from a mental health perspective, challenging times from my youth right up until my early 30s. So I had long periods of depression, and uh,
Mm,
not that I even knew what depression was back then,
right.
because I just didn't know. I actually, my term for it was, I was chronically lazy. That's what I was told a lot when I was a kid, and so I just thought this was a symptom of my laziness. Those days
Mm,
where you feel that you can't physically get out of bed, or you have kind of these self sabotage and that sort of thing. But I'd say, once I kind of got onto a period of where I was willing to help myself, and that was in the early 30s. In my early 30s, I started to suddenly meet these people that were
mm,
really influential on my on sort of my own development. So I had a mentor in Canada, and she started out as my therapist, but she really believed in I had big things ahead of me, and so really became my mentor. And yeah, her name's Dr. Johnny O'Connor, now Dr. Johnny Gray, and she was a super empathetic person who had that same sort of energy as my grandma did. Only,
wow.
she was only a couple of years older than me. But yeah, just sort of, it comes back to what I like to do in my coaching. Is I fundamentally look to help people find their own highest potential, and she did that for me. She saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself, and I think that's when mentors or coaches or anybody who's having an influence on other people, uh, when you can recognize the potential in someone and help guide them to that, or help lead them to that. And she did that for me. She really opened my eyes in a lot of ways. And I also had a meditation teacher who really opened my mind about spirituality. I used to be a very kind of cynical, negative person where those kind of things were involved, and just through a few months together, really opened my eyes to a lot of things. So I'd say that's when I made the most significant changes in my life. Were in my early
Mm.
30s, and those were a couple of the people that had an amazing impact on me.
So I love the fact that you said even though she was just a few years older than you,
Mm.
she had almost like the wisdom, if you will, of your grandma. So age really is there's no limitation, if you
No.
will, to age. And when we can consider just another human being who has different insight than we do, I think that's a great thing, and that you were able to do that with this human being that guided you in a way, right?
Yeah.
And you said in your early 30s is when you really made significant changes. Would you mind sharing what some of those were?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. Sort of, I had a couple of different synchronicities in my life, but it started with I was listening to the radio, and there was a public service announcement that was talking about if you are experiencing these symptoms, you may be suffering from depression. And I said, and I thought to myself, wow, this is what it's called. And so at first, I thought before that happened to me, I thought maybe I can fix what's wrong with me through hypnosis. I thought there was going to be some kind of trick to changing my personality, changing. I was deeply unhappy with who I was, and I thought, I can't change myself, so maybe there's some trick. And so I sought out some hypnotherapy, but the hypnotherapist was actually also a certified counselor, and so he helped me through the first kind of steps. So counseling was one. And then I started to explore different types of therapy. Another thing that happened to me was I was suffering from chronic lower back pain, and I was kind of at the end of my rope. I'd gone to a chiropractor, therapy, massage therapy, all kinds of things, and then I went to do some yoga because I thought nothing else is helping. And in this yoga practice, at the end, we would meditate for 15 minutes. I didn't know it was meditation, but it was a
Nice.
meditative process. And that really put me in a state where I thought, wow, I wish I could feel this way all the time. And so my counselor said, oh, you enjoy meditation. And he put me in touch with this meditation teacher in Vancouver who taught me a form of meditation that really opened my mind. And actually, he also, as someone who was back then considered myself to be an atheist, he said to me, I'll never forget this. He said, imagine the universe is an ocean, and imagine each of us is a drop in that ocean. The ocean is God. And I thought, wow, it's not, it totally changed the limits of what that could be, rather than just a very sort of the very limited kind of gray bearded old man on a throne telling us what to do and judging us.
Right.
It really opened my mind to what it could be. It's so much deeper, and obviously the images we have in our religions are just metaphorical, and so now I respect all religions and all belief systems because I know that for people there are important truths there that guide people. So that was a fantastic, eye-opening, mind-blowing kind of experience. And then through repeated different types of therapies, I learned to change the way I believe and the way I think, my habitual ways of thinking, and those made the most fundamental changes in my life. And so through that process, and I had my ups and downs. It wasn't this steady improvement.
Right.
I'd still fall back to having dark periods and tough periods, but then I continued to work at it. When I had a good day, I would work more at it. Then I'd step back, and then I'd, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and I kept progressing. And the fact that I glimpsed to the potential and the possibility, that was what kept me going. Knowing that, wow, no, I've got a taste of it. I know there's more out there, and I'm going to continue on that path.
I love it. I love it. And you're right. Faith is an important aspect that we should all have. I always say even an atheist has to believe in something.
Yep. Yeah.
So
I was so self-assured back then that, oh yeah, I look at the science, and I thought that people were just, they were just superstitious. I looked at it in the same light, and I thought people just couldn't cope with the fact that they were mortal, and they would, and now I've had just some profound experiences through meditation and through some of the other kind of things that I've opened myself to experience. And I think that's the thing, having an open mind and just being curious about the world and the universe is just that has, instead of thinking I've got it all figured out in my 20s, I kind of realized I know nothing, and I'm just at the tip of the iceberg.
it's Peter, it's very interesting. When we get older, we realize the more we learn, the less we know.
Yeah.
Right?
How vast the possibilities are, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it's incredible because we can learn forever.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing because a lot of people, they finish high school, they finish college, they finish whatever, and then they don't look to learn anymore. They think they've done it all, they know it all. And I think that's such an injustice that they're doing to themselves when we shouldn't just sit in front of a TV after work and say, oh, that's all I have. It's work, go back, sit on the couch. Work, go back, sit on the couch. Meanwhile, there's this whole opportunity to grow as a human being, even if you're not going to leave your job, you're going to stay in your career. But just the knowledge acquisition that we can have just by knowing, I think it makes us a better person because we can have deeper conversations the more we know.
I agree, and I can't even explain it in terms of accumulating knowledge, but I've the more I learn, the more I become curious about things. And I didn't love school back in my youth. I did the things I had to do,
Mm,
to get where I needed to go, but I didn't find enjoyment in learning. And I think as I get older, I've just gained so much appreciation for learning and learning in different ways, not just but reading a lot more, but listening to people who know more, have had different experiences to me, but just this sense of being able to grow and expand myself and gain more knowledge because it gives me new perspectives, and that's one thing that travel's done for me as well. That's it's such a learning experience, traveling to different countries, meeting new people, seeing how they live differently, hearing about their experiences, and so on. So
mm.
learning in all its forms, I think, is extremely valuable, and I hope I never stop. It's when
Yeah.
you asked me about the people who'd influenced me. To be fair, I should also mention my ex-wife, because those first years, she accompanied me on that kind of growth journey, and really opened my mind to, if you set your mind to something, or you believe in something enough, you can make it happen. And she kind of was the catalyst for me, wanting to sell the business, leaving Canada, moving, traveling through Asia, backpacking, and
Mm.
then ending up in Europe. So, but as the relationship kind of deteriorated after 10 years, at the end of the relationship, she said, since you've been working on yourself since I've known you, sort of saying, when you're going to be finally finished, right? And I'm my view is hopefully never, that
Right.
I'll never be finished, right?
I love that. And she acknowledged you, and it's great that you gave her credit also because she was there with you the whole time. Sometimes we don't give credit to the people that deserve it because they're no longer in our lives, but we need to give credit along the way because sometimes it was their involvement in our lives that made us even think differently, act differently, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
Absolutely. Every relationship, we sometimes regret, the time we've spent with people, or because the relationship ended badly. I think every relationship is a learning experience. I've grown
Mm.
from every relationship that I've been in, and I can see. It wasn't until I was able to reflect enough to recognize how I contributed to my unhappiness in those situations, and how I undermine things. And I think um, if we look at relationships as this way that we can self-reflect, the people in our lives reflect things back to us, but also recognizing sort of what patterns of behavior we can see in those relationships, and how those can evolve over time. Learning to know ourselves is one of the biggest things we learn in life.
Mm.
Learning how to learning who we are, learning how to navigate life in a way that's more in alignment with our values, and what we really want on a deeper level. So relationships are just so important part of that whole learning process, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So when we consider learning about ourselves, understanding the world around us, it all really comes down to how we communicate. how we communicate with ourselves, how we communicate with others, how we even show our intentions through the words we use. So I want to go ahead and share this with you as well one more time.
Absolutely.
In a world where words shape destinies and connections forge futures, this November 22nd to the 24th, Speaking Prowess brings you the ultimate hands-on workshop. We have a lineup of some of the most influential communication experts in the industry. These are the voices that will guide you on a journey to enhance your ability to connect, influence, and succeed. Sifu Raphael, master instructor and founder of Speaking Prowess, blends communication and leadership to help you reach your full potential. Richard Walsh brings his strategic and tactical expertise to deliver rapid, lasting results for your business. Dr. Oliver T. Reed, the international multi-best-selling author and motivational speaker, known as the Writing Coach, will help you craft your messages with precision. Jose Escobar, a nationally recognized speaker and leader, will guide you in mastering personal development and leadership skills. This is more than just an event. It's a game-changing, skill-building experience. Walk away with communication prowess that transforms your personal and professional life. Speaking Prowess, where communication becomes your superpower. Reserve your seat now.
So everything in life falls back on that communication. When we can get our message across, whether it's a personal message, a business message, a marketing message, anything. I mean, Hollywood is probably the best at communicating and even changing people's ideas and thoughts about how they think, what they should think. And a lot of people see that and they think it's reality when so many times it's just not.
No, and I agree with you. Communication, the most successful people in life are those who communicate well, who are good communicators. But I'm glad you mentioned the whole not just communicating outward, but how we talk to ourselves, because often we don't recognize that form of communication, or we maybe don't acknowledge it as much as we should. In my coaching work, I look a lot at language and the stories we tell ourselves or about ourselves. But also the way we express ourselves. Just a simple thing like, around motivation, where people will talk about things in terms of I should or I have to, and they talk about the things they want to be doing, but they talk about it in terms of obligation. And I really encourage people to talk about things in terms of I can, I want to, and I will, right? So I have the ability to do it, and I have the desire to do it, and I'm going to make the commitment to do it. Those are the ways I think it's important to talk, because otherwise you're out of obligation. I know when I was a teenager, the things that I had to do or were obligated to, those are the things I resisted doing, and I rebelled against. And I think there's a part of that still in us, and so instead of doing things out of obligation, doing things out of your desire to do them, or you're being drawn to them, or just because of your commitment to them. And I think when it becomes your choice in terms of the language you use, when you frame it in the way that it's your choice, you're so much more motivated. You have less resistance, and it just feels like you're empowered rather than following someone else's script.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. It's I'm putting a post later on today. I already have the graphic for it. And it says, sometimes I talk to myself. And then it says, because I want expert advice.
That's great. I love that.
Because a lot of times we look outward for advice, but we forget to look inward. Because if we look deep enough, we have the answer. But so many times we resist it and we think that we're not good enough because we don't take the time. We want instant gratification. This is why we sit in front of the microwave and say, let's go, hurry up. Why are you taking so long?
But don't you think, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
But don't you think it's also because we don't totally trust ourselves? We trust external experts for, what should I think? It's almost like we're conditioned to do that and not trust that voice within. And that's, that's why I love the coaching approach, because you're coaching, you're leading people to their own answers. Because if you provide someone with the answer, it's not nearly as impactful as if they discover the truth within themselves.
Yeah. And it's important when so here's what happens when people take tests in school. Multiple choice. What does multiple choice give you? Yes, it gives you the answer, and it gives you possible answers, but it doesn't give you the substance for you to dig for yourself, to know the answer. So sometimes you're guessing instead of knowing. And that's why sometimes those multiple questions are terrible, because they don't inspire growth. They don't inspire knowledge. They inspire remembering stuff instead of knowing stuff. And that's a huge difference. And that's why sometimes in education, we have such a gap in the process of how people truly learn.
I agree. And I think a lot of people are learning. What's the motivation to learn? It's because, so I get a grade, so I get a piece of paper at the end of a term. And that never motivated me. I wanted to learn because I was interested. I wanted to learn because it would make me richer for having the experience. And I think if we approached learning more in that way, with this eagerness to see, okay, what can I learn today? How can I grow today? We would be far more motivated. And naturally, there are things that it's one piece of the puzzle, and we need a little bit more determination to learn it. But I think if we have a sort of a general approach to learning that's based in that curiosity and that desire to grow, I think you're just going to be far more motivated. Otherwise, you just doing, again, we come back to this, doing things out of obligation or just for the end result rather than enjoying the journey there, right?
Yeah. So one of we named this show Empower Your Journey with Peter. And how do you say your name? Teuscher?
It's Teuscher. So it's spelled as if it was spelled Toy. That's the way you would pronounce it.
Gotcha. So empower your journey, right? What is it about a journey that can be empowered? How do we empower it?
I think the first and foremost, it's important to recognize that choices are what give you. Choices are a learning tool, and choices are very empowering. I think when we recognize that the choices that we've made have got us here, and then if you don't like where you are now, then choices can get you out of where you are. So the power of choice can not be underestimated, and that's why people will tell a story of themselves being a victim. Even I did it, after my first marriage, I was telling the story that I thought was factual, but instead I was telling a story where I was the victim, and which was not fair, and it was not helpful to me because it kept me stuck. And so recognizing that you made choices to get you where you are, and if it and that's not about blaming yourself. It's about recognizing that you have the power to, the things that you can control, change those, right? Rather than feeling like you're a victim of circumstance or of other people or of bad luck. And so the power of choice is something that's just so important that people don't forget. When you make better choices, I think this is where creating a higher level of awareness, and one of my mottos is awareness allows change, right? So bringing these things to the surface, reflecting, being aware enough to know what all of your choices are. Sometimes we limit ourselves so much in terms of, well, it's only A or B, and no, there's probably
Yeah.
a third way or a fourth way.
Yeah.
So choice is really at the foundation of that for me.
Love it. Love it. When we consider choice, we have a choice. We have a choice of a yes or no. We can accept something, but anytime we accept something, we have to refuse something else if it's going to take place at the same time, right? So I appreciate you saying yes to the show, and you had to have said no to something else. And you told me earlier you were bombarded with phone calls, but you took out the time to be here with us. So I appreciate that choice that you made today.
Look, I really appreciate being here. I love having these conversations, and I love adding value. That's one of the things that's been my guiding principle for a number of years now. Whereas, I used to think about how much money will I make or whatever. Now it's really, where do I think I can add value?
Mm.
So look, I want to thank you, because I think any chance to have these kind of meaningful conversations is enriching for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They change, conversations can change the way you even think about a person, right? It allows us to go deeper into who they are because we have to actually want it. Unlike some people who just, yeah, okay, whatever. But they don't get into it. So for me, it's always about how can we impact one another? What's the difference that we will bring with this conversation? And you said something that you like these conversations because it can impact, right? It can impact the listener, not just me, because yes, I am listening to you and I appreciate this, but anyone else listening to us, to our conversation, because they go, I never thought of it that way, or wow, I better start taking some action on my life, how I can I can empower my journey to do certain things in life. When did you decide that coaching was going to be your thing?
It was the first seed was planted when I was a basketball coach back in
Okay.
Canada. I was a high
So
school
you were
basketball
coaching.
coach. Yeah, yeah, coaching in a different way.
Mm,
There's a lot more mentoring and teaching involved in that form of coaching. But what I experienced was, and I sought out schools that had in the sort of rougher part of Vancouver where some of the kids struggled, and because I wanted to, there was part of me that wanted to have a positive impact on others,
mm,
without maybe consciously knowing that's what I was doing. But I would have, out of the team, you'd have two or three guys that you would resonate with, and maybe after a game, you'd go for pizza together and you'd have conversations. There was one student who was in a foster home, so but he wanted to go to the same school as his brother, so he had this long commute. So and he lived near me. His foster home was near me, so I would take him on these car rides to practice and or to games, and we'd have these conversations, and he'd open up to me about things fears, concerns, worries in his life,
mm,
and I was started having these conversations with him, and through those conversations I realized, wow, I've actually learned quite a bit that I can pass on. And then especially this one student who at one point had to say, look, I don't know if I can let you play if you don't get your grades up or show up to class. This is a guy who turned his grades around, and look, I'm not taking any credit for this because he did it all on his own, but
right.
he called me later. He said, coach, I'm not good enough to play to be an athlete, to play basketball at a higher level, but I love sports, and so I got my grades up, and I'm going to go into sports medicine. And I'm like, wow, what a
That's cool.
transition. And look, that one student, and I had a few that really blossomed, and we both did through those conversations. And I think recognizing that, wow, I can have an impact on people, that was sort of the first seed. And I wasn't quite sure how I would do it. I didn't even know what coaching was back then in terms of the coaching that you and I do.
Right.
But that was kind of planted the first seed. And then from there, it was just different experiences. I worked in the corporate world. I started doing sales training and stuff like that. And and then sales coaching. And then I decided, as part of wanting to be a better manager, but also with my own interest in coaching, I started to go into NLP and take different courses. And then when I got my systemic coaching certification, that whole process, that just that confirmed that this is the path that I wanted to go, because I discovered through the coaching process so much about myself, and I realized I can pass this on to other people, but I can also, through the coaching process, really help people discover things that I did the hard way, you
Mm.
know, back when I was still trying to figure myself out.
Right. Yeah. So that was the beginning of I can help people.
Mhm.
When did you seek it out? Did people come and approach you more outside of your students? How did that start to evolve for you?
Well, as I love the thing that Stephen Covey says about, when as soon as you learn something, teach it to someone else, because then it will anchor it more firmly in you. And so as I was learning these things, I would teach them to others, or I would start coaching people for free,
Mhm.
within my group of friends, and people were having results, so they would come back to me. And so once I got my formal certification, it was all just through word of mouth that people would come to me, and it started to evolve there. But the other thing that happened was, one of the trainers that I had in the coaching program that I was in, he approached me and said, "Listen, you've got a knack for this. For one, your business background, plus now the kind of coaching fundamentals you have, whether it's the business world or the private world, you have a lot to offer." And so he offered through his consulting company that he would be able to get me my first kind of bigger contracts. And so
Mm.
it really compounded and evolved over there, to the point that I don't really market myself, other than the kind of Facebook and LinkedIn stuff, but people come to me word of mouth. And I think that's the reassuring thing, when people come back to you, or they send other people to you. It just that tells you that you're on the right track. And the
Mhm.
other piece is, after every coaching session I do, I feel amazing. I feel great. And
Mm.
so I think that just, when I talk to people about happiness being this kind of feedback, that the choices you're making and the way you're perceiving the world, that the happiness is just a feedback that you're on track there. You're seeing things the right way, you're seeing things clearly, but you're also making the choices, that are in line with your values and your deepest needs. So I think I just kind of followed that intuitive path, and it led me ever further into this coaching.
Love it, love it. And you're right. When you do help someone, it's such a rewarding feeling, right? Consider um, your first coaching sessions. How were they?
Um, the first coaching sessions were, I would catch myself taking on the other person's problem and wanting to fix it, and I think that was
Mhm.
the biggest hurdle in the early days, wanting to be because it's this reminder for myself that I don't have the answers for you. The answers are within you, and I'm gonna, and so I think that's a big distinction for me from sort of the therapy side of things, where people make a diagnosis, and they in coaching, it's not a diagnosis. You kind of follow where the clues take you, and it's always got to be the truth that's within that other person.
Mm.
So those early coaching days were, I put myself under pressure to get that result, when you have to let that result come to you.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Eh, So, and I love that you are open with that, because a lot of times you can't take everybody's problem, make it your own. All of a sudden, you're the one with the problems,
Exactly.
right? And that doesn't work. And all of a sudden, they may be the ones that have to coach you instead. So, understanding that we have to separate in order to basically see from the top, we have to kind of look down, not because we're better, but because we need to see the bigger picture. We need to see and say, hey, you know what? You have something on the back of your neck. Because if we're looking on, we don't see everything. And I think a great coach can see all the different angles that we can't see. I have no idea what's in the back of my neck. Do you?
No, that's why I go to coaches sometimes
That's
too, you
right.
know?
Likewise. Yeah. So therefore, we need somebody with their eyes wide open to be able to see things. When I talk to my coach and I'll say, I was thinking like this, and he goes, stop. Why are you doing that? I'm like, he goes, no, stop. Realize what you're doing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I love it. Thank you. But
Yes.
it's those moments in a coaching session when we can actually stop and pay attention, to listen, right? And sometimes it's a great coach is going to listen to what you're saying, but they're not going to interpret it the way you want it to. They're going to interpret it the way they are from an outside view, and actually give you their honesty, because a lot of coaches will tell you, the bad ones obviously will tell you what you want to hear, because
Yeah.
guess what, they want to keep you engaged, they want to keep you paying, right?
Yeah.
But the good ones are going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to tell you the truth, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And people are like, what kind of coach are you? You're going to hurt me? But the good ones may tell you things that are going to hurt, because they're not lying to you. I'd rather have a coach that is super honest, not one that's just gonna, oh yeah, great, you're doing great, keep it up. That doesn't serve me.
No, and I don't feel like when I feel like I'm not adding value anymore, or maybe even I'm enabling this person's, issues and dysfunctions,
Mhm.
then I know it's time for a change. I had a client who ran his own internet SEO company, and we he would have kept me coming, every 2 weeks
Mm,
in his office, talking about the issues that he had, but he was the things we talked about him making progress and stuff on, they weren't getting done. And so when you get someone who is using you just as someone to complain to,
mm,
or someone who nods in agreement but isn't willing to take the action steps, then maybe they're just not ready. And so I had the difficult conversation. It's, you never want to give up clients, I guess, but I don't think I want to continue with people who are not willing to do the work with themselves, right? So it's not satisfying for me as a coach, but it's not helping them either. If they
mhm.
think that, well, I've got a coach, so eventually I'll make progress. Well, no, the coach doesn't do the work. We can't do the work for you. You've got to do it yourself. And so I've had to do that on one or two occasions where I said, look, I think we've just kind of come as far as we can go with the coaching process until you're ready to, and then I'm happy to come back and work with you more. But
Mm,
I think being honest as a coach, and authentic that way is just so important, if you really want to help people make progress.
yeah. I 1,000% agree with you. I've had to hire coaches who are amazing in the beginning,
Mhm.
and then they have nothing else to offer. So I've had to fire them. But then I've also had to fire clients who yesed me because I love what you're doing. I'm going to follow your guide. And then they wouldn't do the work
Yeah,
that's required. So
exactly.
at a point, I'm saying, I'm not serving you, so we need to part ways. Oh, no, no, I'm like, but you haven't. I said, listen, we can have another session. If you do what I'm asking you to do, or what I've already asked you to do, then we can talk. I come back to that session. Have you done it? Oh, then the excuses start to come out. They come out of the woodwork. I'm like, wait a minute. I said, so yeah, so I guess today's going to be our last session. They're like, but wait. I'm like, I think I'm not the right coach for you.
Yeah.
I think you want somebody who's going to hold your hand and tell you you're amazing and that you're doing great when you're not. I said, so I'd rather be honest with you. Isn't that why you hired me in the first place? Yes. I said, listen, I said, I love you. You're great, but you are not willing to do that, which will take you to the next step, to the next level. So let's part ways. And as painful as that is, it's more painful to keep taking their money
Yeah.
and it, money does not buy happiness, because if I'm unhappy and you're giving me the money to be your coach, if I'm miserable, wow, I'm going to have to charge you like 40 times the amount that you're paying me in order for me to be there. It's not worth my time.
I can totally relate because I had a client just a couple of years ago that I was very lucrative. I was doing a lot with their business and stuff, and uh, and I got to the point where you know, I was writing my invoices to them, and I wasn't feeling good about it, and and it's interesting because when I said, "Look, I just don't think we can work together anymore. I think I'm going to we need to part ways." They didn't understand it,
Mm.
and I guess from the outside, it's odd to give up a good paycheck, and the client wants you, but when you don't feel like you're adding value, and I don't know if he fully understood when I said I just don't feel like I'm adding value, and I guess that's you word it differently. I'm not of service, but I think it means the same thing.
Mhm.
If you're not serving people, you're not adding value to their lives or to their business or whatever they're trying to achieve. I think that the money's just so empty then, and I'd rather find there's always ways to make money. I think that was one of the big lessons when you open your mind and you have sort of a growth mindset, and you can and you're not driven by fear. You recognize you'll always find ways to make money, right? You don't have to sacrifice your values and your principles in order to make it.
Well, not only that, but you're letting go of someone who is not willing to do the work, and you're gonna replace them with somebody who is, which will add value to you. Forget the finances, right?
Yeah.
It's they're adding value. I wanna work with somebody who adds value to me as well. It's not a one-way street here as a coach, and you know that because you're an
Yeah.
incredible coach, but it's about both of us adding value. Because if I'm going to work with you, I have to resonate with you. I want to be able to sit with you and be comfortable in your presence. If I'm uncomfortable in your presence, because if I feel like I have to keep, oh, you didn't do this again. Oh, you didn't do that again. Oh my God. But you're complaining, you're not going anywhere, but you're not doing the work. And it becomes a repetitive thing. All of a sudden, I'm being drained, and I don't allow anybody to drain me. So therefore, let's move you away, and let's bring somebody who wants to help me be as energized as I want to be.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on increasing your prices as a coach?
That's an issue that I find a lot of other coaches have,
Mhm.
is how much can I charge, or feeling good about how much they can charge. I you know Increasing my prices. My prices are, I try and look at what I think is fair because I know what the market's doing and so on.
Right.
But I also will leave the option if someone is legitimately they need my services and they're legitimately struggling, I will amend them. So I kind of take it that way. Um, I'm also very fortunate. I have an agent that books me as well, so they kind of set the prices, so I don't have to negotiate that.
Mm,
And I kind of like when that element is taken out of it, then I can
right.
focus on what I'm really good at. But I think as you build up confidence in yourself as a coach, and you recognize the value that you can add, I think that is needs to drive your prices. Because I've known people who charge exorbitant prices for their coaching because it's kind of this prestige thing, and it's all about the hype. But at the end of the day, I don't know if they really believe in themselves as much as the
Mm,
price tag that they're charging. So, look, if you believe you're worth a million a year for your coaching services or more, then all the power to you. So that's the way I look at the pricing model is how much value do you think you add, but also it's got to be this give and take. And sometimes I'm happy to coach people for free, like who really need it, because it's not about the money, right? So
Mhm.
I think the people, so yeah, I think it's this combination of understanding what people can, how much, if you're coaching someone in business and the work that you're going to do with them is going to exponentially help them grow, then I think you can feel very comfortable in charging a good fee to work with those people.
Mhm.
But if someone's really uh, the people that are really struggling, I try not to do it for free, because they won't commit to it, and they won't take your message. They won't take it as serious. Something's only worth as much as you pay for it for some people,
Mhm.
and so I try and recognize that. So sorry, it was kind of a convoluted answer to your
No, 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 I
question.
guess you're right, dead right on. Here's one of the things I always say: if people don't pay, they don't pay attention.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's important, but the value that we portray for ourselves, and one of the things is I'm always say to myself, I'm worth more, right? And when you can be there, but when you and you're right, when it becomes ridiculous and you're just doing it because the money is the catalyst, if you will, it doesn't serve you. Because if all you're thinking about is like you see a client, you go, oh, I'm going to make this amount of money on them, instead
Yeah,
of saying, I'm going to help them,
yeah,
right?
it's the wrong
That's
motivation.
the difference, right? You
Yeah.
can say, hey, listen, but in the same thing, you can go and buy a Chevy or you can buy a Maserati,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
who are the people that drive around with Maseratis, and who are the people that are happy with Chevys? I know plenty of people who have enough money to have several Maseratis, yet they drive around a Ford. They
Yeah.
drive around a car that's 10 years old, because it's not about the elegance, it's about the functionality. How do I get there? Yet some of these people that I know, they'll they'll they don't fly first class either. But sometimes when it's needed, they will hire a jet. They'll Because they need to get somewhere and the airlines are not providing them the schedule they need. So in order to get something, they will pay the extra, but they don't fly first class.
And those are the people who their identity is not tied to that. There was a time living in Germany, and I drove a really nice car, and I thought, it's a symbol of my success, and there's just other things like that, and you get so identified with it. And when I got rid of that car in 2019, since 2019, I haven't had a car. I'm lucky that the city I'm in has all kinds of other ways to get
Transportation.
around, but I found that was such a liberating thing, to get rid of the nice car that people, wow, look at the car you drive, because it wasn't part of my identity. I didn't need it, right?
Mm.
And so, look, I can take a taxi or rent a car anytime I need, but so I think that really taught me a lot. And I think to go back to your question about raising your prices or what you're going to charge, uh, I think you have to ask, what's your time worth? And the
Mm.
busier you get, you have a finite amount of time that you can commit to coaching. And so if the demand is there, then the price you set will help weed out the people who really want to invest, and the people who don't. And
Yeah.
so that's what it comes down to. Obviously, when you're just starting out and you're like, well, I've got lots of time, but not enough money, then you have a different
Right.
attitude. But I think valuing time, we both know that time is the most valuable commodity we have in life, and it's finite. And so when you put a higher value on your time, I think that's an important piece when making that decision as well.
Yeah. I have a client of mine who bought a Bentley. Meanwhile, his regular everyday car is he has two of them, right? Well, now with the Bentley, he's got a SUV and he's got a minivan.
Yeah.
And I said, "Why'd you buy the Bentley?" He goes, "Because a lot of my clients are very wealthy." I said, "Fair enough." And he goes, "If I show up to their house in my minivan, they're not going to take me serious." if I show up in my other car, they're not going to take me serious. The only way they take me serious is if I show up at their level. And he could buy several Bentleys, but he only bought one. And I said, so how often do you drive it? He goes, only when I see my clients. I go,
Yeah.
don't you like the car? He goes, nah, it's no big deal. I actually enjoy my other cars better. I said, okay, cool. I said, but at least he made a smart business decision because his clients
Yeah.
expect that. So sometimes we have to meet our clients where they are, right?
Absolutely.
And
And
you
their
did that beautifully.
expectations. Yeah, they have expectations, and then and that's fine. I think you need to play the role that your clients need sometimes. You know, I don't love public speaking, and I get anxious sometimes. But when I do a workshop, you know, you know, I'll do anything from 50 to 100 people, and I step into people have asked me about this. Well, how come you have no problem doing that? And you're, you know, I just step into a role. I try to become who they need me to be in that moment, and so I think that's the same as the example of whether it's the kind of car you drive or whatever. You're doing it for those other people to, you know, you're playing the role they need you to play in order to get the most out of that engagement, that interaction with them, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Peter, I got to tell you, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you, my friend, for being here with me and sharing your knowledge with us. So, how can somebody connect with you?
The easiest way is just through my website, peterteuscher.com, and just remember the last name spelled Teuscher. So peterteuscher.com, you can see it on the bottom of the screen, but for those listening, that's how you spell it. And from there, I write a blog weekly, so people can read, you know, bits of what I'm thinking about, what I'm working on right now, and hopefully it's inspiring for your change or the questions you have in life right now. And it's also gives you a link to buy my book, Rethinking Happiness. So or
Nice,
if you want to book me as a coach, that's all done through my website.
nice, beautiful. Same here for me. I have an incredible event happening, as you saw the commercial we put earlier, November 22nd through the 24th. And across your screen is going on Improve Your Communication Skills to enhance your career, but not just your career, but your personal communication. So speakingprowess.com/train. Come join us November 22nd through the 24th. Peter, this has been an incredible time. Thank you, my friend. And I'm so happy I got to know you a little bit better. I encourage you to come on my other shows as well. So thank you again for today.
Will do. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for your time.
All right. Take care. See you soon, buddy.
Cheers.